Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second webinar and discussion on trauma-informed teaching. Today we'll be talking about strategies and resources. And as we kind of welcome everybody into our Zoom platform or on Facebook, I think that we have a poll to kind of get us started. You can simply go to menti.com on your phone, on your computer, and you can use this code 6137-8085 and answer the question here. Well, we just give everyone a chance to join us. We are so glad that you're here this evening. And whether you're joining us now or later, hope that you find a lot of interesting and useful information in the next hour. So if you want to answer these questions, we'll come back to them in a minute or two. But I just want to say welcome to get started. And maybe I'll go ahead and introduce myself. So this is a webinar that is being put on by the regional English language offices in Europe. There are 3 offices in Europe, one based in Tallinn, one based in Belgrade, and one based in Kyiv. My name is Jennifer Euler, and I'm the regional English language officer that works with embassies across the region that are covered by RELO Tallinn. So welcome to all teachers from my region, from Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, Belarus, Greenland, and Russia. It's really a pleasure to have you here this evening. And I have my colleague here with me this evening, Lottie Baker from the office in Kyiv. If you want to say hello and welcome your audience.
Sure, thanks, Jen. Hi, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know some of you may have been with us a few weeks ago, so thank you for returning, and thank you for all of those who are new to this series for joining us. We're happy to be here. We're happy to be here with our very esteemed expert, Georgiana, to learn more about how we can best help our students who have experienced trauma. So I'm the regional English language officer, usually based in Kyiv, Ukraine. And so I work with teachers in Ukraine and Moldova, and then also in the Caucasus countries. So welcome, welcome everyone.
Great, thanks, Lottie. And while we're waiting and you're answering these questions, I also want to say welcome on behalf of the Regional English Language Office based out of Belgrade. Kevin McCoy is busy traveling in the region tonight and doesn't have the connectivity he expected, but for all those teachers who are in Southern and Central Europe, welcome, and certainly any other teachers that might be joining us from other parts of the world, welcome. We're going to go ahead and open the webinar. So I think we can move to that first slide. This is the second part of our series on trauma-informed teaching. I think, as we were just discussing before this webinar, if you open up the newspaper in any part of the world, whether you're in the United States or you're in Europe or any other continent, there are lots of things that are causing trauma in our schools, and being good educators requires not only being able to recognize what trauma is, but also how to respond to it in an appropriate way. If you'd like to review some of those ideas of what trauma looks like and how it manifests itself in students, I invite you to go back and rewatch the recording from 2 weeks ago when we talked to Georgiana about what is trauma and how is it defined. The format of today's session, I think you'll find really useful. We're going to have lots of moments in which you can interact with the presenter. So I encourage you to put your questions, your comments, either in Zoom or in Facebook. I will be moderating the session and gathering all of your input to share with Georgiana so the larger audience can benefit. And when we finish our 1-hour seminar, which will be streamed live in more than one place, we will continue to be online in another Zoom room that is not recorded and not streamed to build community, react to some of the input that you've heard, and have a discussion with other educators from the region. So I hope you'll enjoy us not only for this first hour of information, but also a second hour of community and discussion. I think there's not a more important time to build resilience and promote well-being amongst teachers and also in our learning and school communities. So please note that your comments on Facebook and chat will be gathered. you will not be using your microphones and cameras in this first session. And so I would ask you to make constructive comments in relation to what can be a very sensitive topic. And next, it's really my pleasure to get out of the way and introduce our English language specialist, Dr. Georgiana Duarte. We're so lucky to have her with us for this second seminar and discussion. She has a CV that's very long, but she's done so much work that I know you'll benefit from. She's an international consultant and recently retired as the Adams Endowed Professor at Indiana State University. She has a PhD in early childhood education, and her teaching experience includes private schools, public schools, Head Start programs, university settings. She's worked as an administrator, a national program reviewer, a trainer, a consultant. She's worked with migrants and migrant, regional, and Native American Head Start programs in the United States. And she has a long career of teaching, service, and research in areas of diverse languages, migrant education, immigrant and international cultures. She's worked a lot on the United States-Mexico border area, and so I know she can relate to some of the same issues with displaced persons and migration happening in our European homes here. She's committed to working on issues related to human rights, linguistic diversity, and the trauma of poverty. She's done so much research and has been involved in a lot of international collaborations, including a current adjunct faculty position at Kathmandu University in Nepal. And so we have so much to learn from her work there in Nepal and Peru and Mexico and in the United States. Welcome, Georgiana. We look forward to engaging with you over the next hour.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be with all of you this evening. And Jen, my head was getting a little heavy with all these words, but I am looking forward to all of your voices because I don't think I like that word retired. I'm going to say rewiring. I am committed to teachers. And so wherever you're sitting and listening, I applaud you in your work. So let's get started. Today is trauma-informed teaching. And I'm really excited about today because it's a lot lighter. If you were with me the last time, it was a heavy package to carry. There's a lot of heavy content. But today it's going to be a lot lighter, kind of like water, like refreshing. We're going to explore how we can use those trauma-informed strategies for the classroom. And please, if you have time, join me in that facilitated session afterwards because your voices are really important. I'm still learning. I know I sounded ancient in that last bio, but I'm still learning from all of you. In this session, we're going to talk about responsive classrooms and how we can support those experiences in social-emotional growth. We're also going to be looking at parents and caregivers. And finally, we'll also be examining how to use and support those community resources to really make a difference, So feel that refreshing water because today is going to be refreshing. So you can kind of splash it on your face this evening and let's get started. Before in the first session, I said it was like a walk in the forest. And it's also like a walk in the forest today too, because we're going to be observing, we're going to be reflecting about our own students. I really hope that you're thinking about them as we move through this session today. Even if it's one student you're thinking about, together we'll be flexible, we'll be collaborative, and most importantly, think about your population of students. I see that we have a whole variety of levels. So I want you to know from the heart of hearts that I really put a lot of thinking into this to make sure that they covered all of those levels. So I'm going to be sure to use the word student throughout this. I've worked at all levels. I have two sons who are high school educators. And so I'm really sensitive to the high school teachers who are in this session. So here we go. Let's walk through that forest. Yes, teachers who believe they can make a difference in their students' lives really do. So yes, you make a difference. Sometimes we don't think we do, but we really do. Enhancing instructional strategies is part of what we're going to be looking at. All of you who are teachers in this session will think about your strategies and we're going to tweak them. We're not going to turn them upside down. We're not going to throw them out. we're going to tweak them and re-examine the instructional strategies so they embrace practices that will support students who have experienced trauma. So let's take a look. We are going to look at classroom schedules, transitions, cooperative learning, and classroom discussions. Those are our 4 major areas that we're going to be kind of exploring in this first section. So how can a classroom schedule be important for students who have experienced trauma? Using your heart and your brain, let's share that chat. Let's share those ideas in the chat.
Okay, everybody, here's your moment. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure and write in the chat on Facebook or here in Zoom, and we'll be gathering those. I know it takes a moment between when we ask you the question and you have time to think about it and put it in the box, but we really, really want to hear from you. So I am curious to hear what our teachers have to say about this. Lottie, I'm curious to hear what they have to say about this, Georgiana. And I can see that we have a couple of comments coming in. So I'd encourage everyone to go ahead and put it there. You know, I'm thinking, Georgiana, about this story that I told in our last webinar about a teacher commenting that being lost when he was a child had affected his ideas about schedules, that he needs to know where he's going. And I think that would be a comment that many teachers would make, like providing a roadmap so that the students feel safe during the class. And here we go. Now it's coming.
I'm kind of excited to see the difference between the elementary teachers' schedules and the high school teachers, because if you're an English language teacher, those schedules are going to look really different.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to comment what age they teach in your comment, that's great. We have some things here, Georgiana. Provides stability, helps my student know what's coming next, so the importance of a schedule. Another teacher says, short sessions, preferably in the morning, are one way to adjust the schedule. Another teacher has said, again, it gives students a sense of security when they don't know what's happening in their lives from one day to the next, to know what's going on in class. And one more comment here, trauma can be exhausting. Okay, and early morning sessions can be difficult, so different than our earlier comment. Shorter sessions may be easier, especially for English language learners. Students need to have structure, so lots of comments like that. It helps diminish the trauma. Consistency helps students know what to expect and when.
These are incredibly profound. I wish I had the one that said exhausting. Yes, all of these are spot on. You can tell that most of you said building trust, having a security, predictability. I particularly love the one that said, yes, trauma is exhausting, and to have those shorter chunks of time in the morning to really connect to the students. I applaud that particular one. They're all really valuable, and they all go back to building trust, building predictability, and having the students. And one of the things that we really need to do is also to make sure that if we have a schedule, is to really post it, to make sure that visual supports. So when they're not listening to us and they're more visually engaged, they can see that schedule in front of them, and to reinforce it and to have that predictable schedule every single day, that they know what's next. But it also creates communication opportunities. Hey, that's not working for me. I had a student once like, hey, that's not working for me. I can't get from location A to location B. And so we had to talk about that. She would get into the hallway and she would be lost emotionally. And it took her a while to navigate getting to the next place. And so creating those communication opportunities about the schedule too. Let's look at other schedule issues. Let's look at some ways that we can tweak things. Let's look at a typical schedule, right? This is a high school schedule, and we can make small changes, right? And some of you already alluded to that, making small changes by making the morning smaller chunks of time in response to students who are experiencing emotional tough moments. So this is the typical one on the left, where students arrive, homeroom, world history, Jen, how would you change that to tweak it up to be responsive to students who may be having a tough time with changes and time slots?
You know, this is a good question, Georgiana, and if anybody in the audience would like to help, you may have better ideas than I do. I think I might build in some more transition time at different points rather than waiting for so long, maybe building in some little breaks. It would depend on your students, I guess, and how old they are. So I'm not sure, Georgiana, and I wish the audience would help me.
Let's take a look at some changes. Let's look at some, oh, there we go. Yeah. So you're exactly right. Students have difficulty with changes, even when they are not experiencing trauma. So those who have had experiences of trauma or unpredictability, things that are going on in lives. So we can tweak our schedule a little bit. So let's take a look, because there's two ways I have adjusted the schedule. So when students arrive, that's an opportunity. Having an affirmation activity every single morning. Oh, you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, Joseph. Welcome, Maria. Welcome, Sophia. You may have your own affirmation activities that you might want to develop, and they can be created by the students. I had one student go, whoop, 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 the child come in, and then that set the tone for all the other kids going, whoop, 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 coming in. So it doesn't always have to be the teacher initiated. Homeroom is another area that you can tweak. You can adjust it.
Georgiana, before we go any further, I have a question that's coming from the audience. It seems important right now. Can you explain what an affirmation activity is?
It's an affirmation activity is affirming the kinds of wonderful things. I am amazing. Yes, I am. I had a good night. I can do this. It's affirming the strengths of the students. And sometimes they emanate from the students, and sometimes the teacher has to create them to get them moving. You can have an affirmation slogan, and we'll talk about that later in our talk this morning. But affirmation activities can be something so simple and so quick, and they can be changed up. You can say, "Oh, I'm so bored with I'm amazing. Let's come up with another one." And so the students can come up with another one. I am
Georgiana, you're an amazing specialist. I'm gonna let you get that.
So these are the affirmation activities to really affirm their worth, to affirm they're okay. Yes, it's raining outside, but we're feeling good. You know, those kinds of things, to really affirm that they are special and they are unique. Homeroom is a term that we use in the US and many other countries, but it's that first space, that first chunk of schedule. They arrive in some room and they get organized and then they move out. And this is where you can check in. Hey, how's everybody doing? It doesn't have to last too long. Or you can even check in with yourself. Woo, I'm so glad I'm here with you folks. You can do a self check-in to get the ball started with the students. I had a fabulous night. My husband cooked me chicken or whatever. You know, you can go little things. And then the students go, hey, who else wants to check in? Who else wants to check? And they don't have to check in. They can decide that today is not their day to check in. We moved into world history. Let's take a 5-minute breathing exercise. And that could be 2 or 3 minutes. You're seeing everybody getting antsy or stressed. It could be a little breathing exercise. And then they move, as you said, Jen and others, there could be a transition. Okay, let's do a yoga move as we go over to the next class. Let's do the downward dog before we leave, stretch that back out, and so forth and so on. So each one of these is just a little tweak. Doesn't last a long time, shakes up the body a little bit. If you love music and your students love music, you might integrate a little 1-minute piece of the beginning of a song when everybody knows that song kind of moment. Stretching. I'm going to stretch as I move to the next place. And so I always like to do this. Give yourself a hug, hug, hug. When I worked with young children, I'd say, give yourself a hug, hug, hug. We're going to move over to, Mrs. So-and-so's room. But each one of those can be teacher-led or they can be student-led. And you can say, oh, today my back is giving me a little bit of grief. Sophia, can you start the back stretch? And so you can empower the students to start these little these little changes to the schedule that will bring them to a calm space, to bring them to knowing that they're transitioning to somewhere else. In the chat, could you think of one small schedule change you might make? I just shared a whole bunch, but you don't have to do that. You can just change it slowly. Please share one small schedule change you might make to support students affected by trauma.
Okay, everybody, now's your chance. Or if you have other ideas, maybe you've already come up with some creative or innovative ideas, we'd love for you to share them here so that our community can benefit.
I think teachers are really interesting. I had one teacher, and some of you probably have your own little, excuse me, she'd go like this. The children knew exactly, I mean, they were fifth graders. They knew exactly what they were supposed to do. And they'd all go, and they'd close their eyes, and it was just like, what is going on here? But she had this little thing with her little fingers, and they knew that was the moment to shut the eyes. And so whatever you're doing, please share it, because
we're getting some comments now. We just have to be patient. Maybe we should have done a little like hand gesture while we were waiting, Georgiana. So someone said, add more time for transitions than you normally would. Start by asking everyone to share the answer to the question, what makes you smile? I really like this one. Another teacher said, my students like to have a chance to move and refocus. So short dance parties when everyone is fidgeting. And let's see, we have one more here. I teach young adults, and we always do chickens and then some mindful breathing. So these are really good instructions. And then one more. It says when classes start early in the morning, to kind of start the first session just a little bit later to give everybody a little bit more time, like starting at 9:15 instead of 9, if you have that flexibility in the schedule.
So we have lots of great ideas, lots of tweaks that we can do the schedule. A lot of ways that we can do that, and we want to make them scheduling habits. I call them scheduling habits. One good thing, I like the dance party, and the dance party can be used in a whole variety of ways. I'm sure you folks are exploring those, but positive quote reflections, I love those to start off mornings. Sharing one's work in class, highlights of the day. These are just examples of making some scheduling habits, and you can start small and build as you see, because as several of you already mentioned, it's always an issue of time. We need more transition time, and we need not to be hurrying through the day. So these are some scheduling habits. And transitions can be tricky. Sometimes there's not enough time, so we have to re-examine our schedule. Sometimes our students are affected by physical spaces. For example, some students don't like a lot of other bodies around them. They have a personal space, but also a physical space might trigger an emotion or feeling. For other students, it might be people. I had a lot of experience with children with uniforms or white coats who have a very negative reaction. So there might be certain people that students associate that person in that uniform or that white coat with the trauma. Another tricky part of transitions is really letting the students know they're predictable and to get them refocused. So they can be really tricky. And it goes back to what many of you already mentioned is how much time do you have? I have found, the schedule is not set in stone. Sometimes schools will give you a schedule, but you can still have some wiggle room, and you can say, okay, this is not working for me. I need a little bit more time with this group of students. So don't be afraid to change it up a little bit. It might work for a couple months, and then you might have to revisit it. So here's how this is. I really love, I have my favorite slides in this session, but this is one of the ones I really love because it's like, okay, how can I reinforce regularity of routines? Uh-oh, it's 3 o'clock. We know it's time for math, right? We can call out and say, hey, you know, we're going to go to Mr. Slovak's room. Please bring out your pencil and notebook. We're going to get ready to go. And then letting them know, especially with young children, we have about 10 minutes left. And you might even have that we know what that means. We have 10 minutes left. And so they're used to maybe a singing bowl or a small, tiny bell that you ring, nothing loud, but something that alerts them that, we have 10 minutes left. We've got to clean up, we've got to transition and go. And then of course, breathing, exercises, meditation, stretching, short dances, all of those can be incorporated into those transitions. So, and I really always say, be mindful of your time because transitions can slip away from us. They can slip away from us. And then we take brain breaks. We can take a 1 minute brain break. And these don't have to be scheduled. You can just have them off to the side. I always say, put this little sticky on your desk and say, okay, I'll keep watching my students and I think we need a brain break. Or this is getting too serious, this discussion, let's take a brain break. Or this is going a direction I don't want it to go. I'm going to switch the channel. Let's take a brain break. And it's interesting because with high school students, if you do this a lot, sometimes the students will say to you, Dr. Duarte, we need a brain break. And then you say, oh, you're right. We absolutely do need a brain break for 1 minute. So let's take a moment. And that can be meditation. That can be closing your eyes. That could be just a minute where they only have private time. It's up to how you want to design that brain break. The next area of these instructional strategies is cooperative learning. And I love this photograph because sometimes I just say, enough. Overcoming trauma affected students' desire to withdraw. And many of you said that they're shy. This can be a major challenge in the classroom. They may not want to share, or they may want to overshare. It can be very attached to you and follow you around. So it can be on the continuum of two extremes. So let's explore cooperative learning as one of those strategies. And essentially, and many of you are familiar with this because you're teachers. So I'm not going to, read this slide, but we have a group of students, right? And we might have a small group. We might start with 2 or 3, or maybe we just have a dyad as that small group or pairs. And our goal is to create a space for safety, for ideas to be respected, for inclusion. So this is really great with shy or withdrawn students. And then we offer them roles. Maybe one person's a timekeeper, maybe one person's a note taker, maybe one person just observes what's going on, right? And this really goes back to your students' personalities, because you need an exit strategy. Sometimes the group doesn't function well. It's not working. They don't want to be in the group. So they need an out. Or maybe they want to change groups. And that's often the case with high school and university students is they say, this is fine, but can I be in so-and-so's group for a little while? And there's a reason for that request a lot of times. 99% of the time, there's usually an emotional reason. So we need to offer an exit strategy. We want to have them interact. And so now, as we transition here we go again. I want to hear your ideas. I really do. What cooperative learning strategies have you tried with your students who have experienced trauma?
Thanks, Georgiana. Everyone in our audience, feel free to put your best ideas either in the Zoom box or on Facebook, and we'll be scooping them up and sharing them here. I know cooperative learning is something that English language teachers in particular are pretty familiar with. And so I'm noticing there are some comments already coming in. I'll wait a second while you type. We can, of course, speak faster than you can type. That's unfortunate, right? Okay. Yeah, this is a really good comment coming in, Georgiana. One teacher is saying that, multi-level classrooms, it's part of being a language student and a language teacher. And so this teacher pairs students with a buddy who can pay attention to the shyer students' needs, or maybe students of different abilities, paying close attention to who's paired with whom. Another teacher says pairing students up with a mentor, so maybe a more mature or a more advanced student. And then another teacher is concurring about giving roles so that everybody has a function in the group and knows what they need to do. These are really, really great comments. One more just coming in. This is good commentary about cooperative work. Paying attention to group size, use smaller groups or pair work, particularly for students who've experienced trauma. They can feel safe with the people that they're partnering with.
These are really good comments, and if you use a lot of pairing, I always say pay attention to when the pairing is really successful for your students who are really, really shy or have experienced a lot of trauma, because you want to repeat that pairing. You want them to grow in confidence with each other. And also, if you have a lot of languages in the classroom, and many of you probably do, it is really important to pay attention to those who are communicating well, and to continue pairing them for a while so they can have some cultural competence and linguistic competence growing and working together. So continuity is a great something to really think about as you watch your students in collaborative learning situations. But clearly, there's another strategy, right? So we use collaborative learning, and we have another set of tools that we can use, which is discussion-based activities. And this is really, I really love how Jen described it at the beginning, that trauma is prevalent. All students experience some level of trauma somewhere. And so discussion-based activities are really to keep in mind. Every topic is sensitive or has the potential to be sensitive, and because they might still be processing the event. They might not feel comfortable. May not even understand how they feel right now. They're still processing what happened or what they saw, and they're still trying to understand it, or maybe they understand it, but they don't know how to express their emotions about it. And so we don't want to make any assumptions here when we have these discussion-based activities. We want to, I always say, tread lightly through that forest situation with students. They might be at any point. So here's some ideas. And many of you shared these already, having small groups, right? Offering discussion formats, allowing space. They don't have to be at the table. They can be under a tree. They could be in the far corner of the classroom in the calming corner. They can pick their topics. They can be teacher generated. I always say use really open-ended ideas. We don't want yes, no. We want really students to share their feelings, to share their ideas, and be able to share how much they want to share. Some students overshare. So be prepared to refocus or redirect. I always say change the station, change the channel. Say, okay, that's a lot of information. Let's let Marco share now for a bit, or redirect to another time period. So these discussion strategies, please use. I'm sure you have a lot of other ones that you've used as a teacher, but the open-ended questions are really, really important. Because you as a teacher will know right away which questions trigger your students, which questions are going to go into territory the students don't want to share on. So here are some guidelines. I always go like this. I have to listen more. And so allow everyone to speak. And that can happen, if you've got young children, or if you've got young elementary students, when they've got something in their hands, that's their turn to talk, and everyone else doesn't have that ball or object. I've seen this in adult group sessions where adults want to all talk, but they don't have that object in their hand, so they can't talk yet. So allow everyone to talk, and respect everyone, showing respect to everyone. And this is, I love the second one because this is where you really, as English language teachers say, this is where you can really model to say, that's a really important point. Who else has a point that's similar? So you start building respect, not between teacher and student, but student across student. Did everybody hear what William said? That was really interesting. Wow. Yeah, Jennifer, you want to join? Okay, Jennifer has an idea. So you really don't want it to be teacher, student, teacher, student. You want to be student, 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 student. You want to build that. And you don't want interruptions. You really want to practice. Did you hear what Jen said? Did anybody else have that similar experience? And you said, can someone clarify what you just said? Or who can tell me who's really listening right now? Let me look at your body language. Let me see who's really listening. And you can use, there's using listening. The teacher can lean forward and say, she can say nothing or he can say nothing, but zero interruptions. There's a lot expressed with the body at circle time or group time or in discussions that's really valuable. And so we really, sometimes the body tells us more than the language does. So now we're going to take a look at our first case study and say, okay, what kinds of strategies? And so this is a student who's Sophia. She's age 9. She had a recent trauma. She was separated from her family and brothers. So Jen, here's some of the observations that I observed as her teacher. Can you think of any instructional strategies or discussion strategies that you might, or what else you would like to know about Sophia?
There's so much I would like to know about Sophia, actually. I would like to know a little bit more about what she was like before all of this happened, and so how big of a departure this is in her behavior. If any of you in the audience have questions that you would like to be answered about Sophia, you can put them in the chat box. We have things coming already. I can see the ... which means that people are thinking and putting some items into the chat box.
Why is she separated from her fathers? That's the big glaring elephant. Yeah. Why is she separated?
Here's another good question related. Who does she go home to? Who's taking care of her? Does she have enough to eat? How certain or uncertain is her home life? So really good questions there. How does she behave in her other classes? Does she have a mother, or is the mother not there? So a lot of questions about kind of, she's separated from her father and brothers. Does she have other brothers and sisters that are with her? Is she the youngest? Is she the oldest? Where is she in the succession of her family? Who's her best friend and why?
We could have another whole hour of questions. You folks are really great. Yeah, there's a lot we don't know about Sophia. There is a lot of strategies we might explore. And so, I'm sure all of you are thinking, what? I need to know more about Sophia so I can select what strategy is the best match for her. So let's take a look. Here we go. I'm sure they're probably in the chat box, and I don't see the chat box right now, but I am sure you're thinking, well, let's learn more about Sophia. Let's observe her and document her, what's going on. But we could maybe post the schedule with visuals so she knows what's coming up next because she's young. Maybe we have to learn more about her literacy level. We'll review it with her so that she knows it's predictable and warm and connecting. She'll have a good day. I know what's next. And then we might integrate some transition activities with Sophia so she's feeling a little bit calmer so that she has time. The comment in the chat box about her hunger and eating, we might want to integrate that on here too, is to say maybe we'll have a couple snacks during the day to see how she's doing nutritionally. And then we might explore things to see who she's playing with, who she's talking to. Let me pair her friend with Sophia, right? let me make sure she's got some friendships in that classroom, and then I'll encourage her to join a small group over time. Not right away. Let Sophia be, right? And then have some choices, some class discussion choices with Sophia. And she may not be ready, but we can try a few instructional strategies. I always say, start small, start small, start small. And so I'm sure all of you are thinking, oh, I would do this and this and this and this. So good. You know, we need to know more about Sophia before we generate more instructional strategies. But this is a beginning, right?
Yeah, and you make it sound so approachable, Georgiana. I appreciate that idea of like just starting small. I feel like all of us can do these things. Thank you.
Little baby bites. We don't want to tackle the whole tortilla, you know, or the whole pizza or the whole meal. We want to just take baby bites to see what works. So now we're going to let me take a look at my environment. Let me look at my classroom to see how I can be, what things are working that are responsive. And so let's take a look at a responsive classroom, because we want to support what we're doing instructionally. How each of our students feels inside your class will always triumph over everything else. There's another quote that I did not put in this slide that this basically says, the child doesn't really remember the physical characteristics of your classroom. They remember you. They remember you. So let's take a look at our classroom that you designed with your students. We've got flexible seating arrangements. We're going to let Sophia, you know, and our other students who are really needing to be near their friends, be near their friends. We're going to dim the lights. We're going to cool down corners. We might use warm colors like this slide to nurture that calmness, right? And then we're going to post visuals to validate and affirm all of these emotions have a place in our world. That we can be angry, we can be sad, we have a right to these emotions. So we want to post visuals that say, hey, it's okay to be angry today, or hey, it's okay to be sad. And it's that responsive environment. And so here's some other ones that we might post. I'm sure you're thinking of a lot more. I just wanted to give you some examples. Choices, choice boards, calming strategies, how to solve a problem. How to create consistency, boundaries. This is my boundary. Sophia might not want a whole bunch of people in her space, so she's going to have little red tape around her desk to give herself some space. And then, of course, maybe some human rights posters. But these can be created by the students, right? Or they can be created by the teacher. So you'll have to think about, oh, I really like that problem solving one. So I'm going to snatch that one for this couple months and try it out. But think of your visuals, because what's on the walls, the students are interacting with every minute. They're looking at them, so they have power. And then we go back to our self-affirming that Jen talked about. Yes, I'm enough. There was a big bulletin board in a city that I just visited where my mom lives, and it said, I am enough. And I thought, I stood in front of that sign for a long time, and I kept reading it again and again and again. I go, wow, that sign has a lot of power. And so these can be visuals. On one side of this is the visuals. I'm an amazing person. Or you might have the activity, I'm enough, and then the student extends it. They could write, I'm enough because, or I can make a difference because, or they can say it out loud. I am proud of myself today because, but these are activities. The visuals can generate the activities. And here's some other examples. If you have a class motto, I really encourage you to make up one. I really do. In our class, we are a team. We respect each other. We take risks. If you took one of these, classroom motto, help each other. They could just be one. Just one. They don't have to be this whole list. These are just examples. Classroom motto, play fair. That's powerful. Be responsible. Have fun. These are both commercially generated. I don't think I would put don't whine. I think I would take that one out. But I think whining has a purpose, right? I like to whine once in a while. Students do too. So, you generate your classroom motto. So how might you use visuals in your room to support the socio-emotional learning needs of all your students? But also those who have experienced trauma. So these affirmation activities are powerful for all students, but particularly so for students who have experienced an event that has really been traumatic.
No, this is great. Everybody, tell us your ideas. We'd love to hear from you, how you might use these visuals or other visuals for social emotional learning, if SEL is a new acronym for you. And I'll tell you while we're waiting for the comments to come in from the chat box, Georgiana, I love these, how positive they are. And I have a motto in my office that's written on my board, because I have a whiteboard in my office that says, "We can do hard things," which is something that I think has been floating around and it's whatever, but it reminds me like, we can be resilient. I can be resilient. So we have some comments coming in here.
I have a motto. I have a motto at the back of my desk before all of this PowerPoint with all of you. It says, "I can do this."
You can. You are doing
it. But I have that motto for everything now. It's in my office. It just says, "I can do this." It's simple. I can do this.
Yeah, we have just a couple comments here, and then we can probably move on. It looks like kind of some agreement, but basically Barbara said that, having students make their own human rights poster, for example, would be really helpful. So there's a confirmation that student generated visuals would be great. And then another teacher has said, "I like that these activities allow students to express themselves and practice language at the same time." So it's kind of 2 for 1 in terms of encouraging and creating safe space, but also asking students to generate language. Oh, we have one more here. Making posters of how to support each other, maybe with sentence stems, like how to give a compliment or the beginning of a sentence like, "I really appreciate," and you could leave that blank and so on.
Excellent. All your visuals have the potential for promoting language, as they should, right? So using your environmental choices, using your visuals, work hand in hand with your instructional strategies and your environmental strategies. They should be supporting each other. So when one of you said in the chat box, and I'll say this very strongly, is you have a human rights poster, use it as an activity bounce board. Use it. When the students come in, I have the right to express my ideas. Next student comes in, they can read the next right. But use those make sure your environmental visuals support your goals, right? They have to work hand in hand. Environmental choices is key. And choice boards are just as important. We've already talked a little bit about this. When I get upset, and then you have a choice board, the student can pull down, I meditate, I breathe, I dance, whatever it is that gets them, calm down. And then the feel good choice board. I love this, where I have all the students say, "What makes you feel good?" And then they put it up on the choice board. And so the feel good choice board is really useful for all ages. And I've had some really wild ones, generated by students. And so I encourage you to think choice boards, and you can extend it in a million different directions. Again, having them choose where they want to think, play, calm down, outside, inside. And so we want to make sure we give them lots of choices and materials. So what kinds of materials can you provide to support socio-emotional growth and expression? You saw the earlier ones with art and all kinds of choice boards. So what kinds of materials maybe that you use now to support social and emotional growth and expression?
All right, everybody, tell us what you're thinking. And we have some unsolicited input, like while people were thinking through your comments you were making. Henin says, what about stickers? Which I think is an interesting kind of addition of environment that I guess you could wear, could put somewhere else.
Stickers or buttons, I'm just thinking of consumption of paper, but stickers are a great idea, and you might even want to recycle them into a bin and make them into buttons. So they can take the buttons stickers out of the basket, because we want our classroom to be sustainable and that sort of thing.
Well, this is great because Draper has said, kind of added this, and said, what about Velcro? Velcro emoji chart, where you can move around the pieces in exactly that way.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Or even a collective mural. You put a big sheet of paper all the way down the hallway and leave it up for a couple months, and people keep adding to it. And they don't have to, be in class to add to it. They can just be strolling down the hallway and add to their emotional ideas.
We have just a couple of authentic materials that you can have students bring in, or even involving students in projects. But I think we could probably come up with a million ideas.
That's
and,
another.
Go ahead.
No, I'm really getting excited about your ideas, everybody, because they're just like spot on. Natural materials, art materials, literature. We could go on and on all day, but these are great ideas.
One more that I have to share because it's so interesting is like one teacher has a magic box for anonymous wishes and askings.
Ooh, a match. I love it. I love it. I love it. But I say steal from each other. Take these ideas and run with them. Now we're going to go to another strategy of working with parents and caregivers. So we're going to kind of take another turn in the road because we've got a lot of tools here. We've got instructional strategies, we've got environmental strategies. Now we're moving into parents and caregiver strategies. So let's move along here. We've got some families and some things to keep in mind. These strategies can be based in communication, talking with parents, empowering parents, and engagement choices. So we use those same principles with our students, right? We talk with them, we empower our students through affirmation, but we also engage them. These are the same consistent foundations of working with our parents because we want to empower them. We want to be accessible. I'm here from 8 to whenever you go home. You can contact me by my cell phone. You can contact me by my WhatsApp. I am here for you as your students, as your son or daughter's teacher, and whatever you feel comfortable with. And then having lots of ways to reach them, email, texting, phone calls, and then provide opportunities where it's a formal opportunity of a conference. So we want to use these. The bottom line, be accessible, be there. And share information about what happens at school. I always say the good, bad, and the ugly can be expressed in a really positive way. He's had a great day, but at 3 o'clock, ouch, we had a bump in the road. And that bump in the road doesn't have to be the whole conference. That whole day where he had a great day is that conference. But the bump in the road needs to be shared. Information through a newsletter. It doesn't have to be 3 pages, please. You don't have time. 1-page newsletter. Open house. An open house is when they can all come for the evening. I always say make sure you feed the parents, collaborate with your school because research shows food makes people show up, right? And then have positive notes. Even if it's that bump in the road, or maybe it was the crying, or maybe it was something really intense, but transmit that information positively so that they're always.
Georgiana, I'm just going to interrupt because I'm wondering if our audience understands bump in the road. It's an expression that we use as Americans, but I'm not sure that everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. It's a euphemism.
You're so absolutely right, Jen. I am so sorry. A bump in the road is when you had this amazing day, and then all of a sudden there was a screaming situation. A child just hit a moment in the day, what we call a bump, but it is a moment where they emotionally were struggling, or maybe they withdrew. It could be a whole variety of emotions, but it's a moment where they're really having a hard time either understanding their emotions or expressing their emotions appropriately, or maybe they kick somebody. It's an event that's a negative event, a negative behavior. It could be tossing the furniture over on its side, but it's that bump in the road. I call it a bump in the road. Many people call it a tragedy, but it's a bump because the big picture is that student had a really good day, but something triggered that student. And so I say, okay, we can look at it as a horrible day because of the one event, or we can flip it over and say, he had a great day, but he had a moment. He struggled with his emotions, and it was a bump. I hope that's clear to everybody.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And actually even gave me a visual, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and also it's looking at the glass half full rather than half empty. We want to look at the positive things our students bring rather than the negative moments. So here's the last thing is we want to build a relationship because our parents matter. Our caregivers matter. Our grandparents matter if they're taking care of the students. Our aunts and uncles, maybe it's foster care parents, maybe it's parents who are adoptive parents. Whoever those caregivers are, that relationship matters because that relationship is transmitted orally to the student. And so we want to make sure that we also connect parents to parents. Just like we built that classroom community with our students, we want to build a parent community with our parents. And so you might have a let's hang out moment once a month where all the parents come in, they meet each other, and you're having juice or coffee or tea or water, and you are letting them explore the classroom. You're letting them see your schedule, you're letting them see your visuals, you're letting them see the students' work, the human rights posters, you're letting them see what their kids are doing all day long. But those relationships matter. Gonna move along. So I want you to think as we went through all these, the newsletter, the notes, the this, the that, how do you engage your parents or caregivers of students who have experienced or have been impacted by trauma? How, what kinds of things that are you thinking of or you're doing?
This is a great question. So everybody put your comments or ideas into the chat box, either on Zoom or Facebook, and we'll be scooping them up. And maybe while we're waiting, just really briefly, Georgiana, there's a comment that's been added that I think might be relevant. What about kids that don't have parents, or maybe when parents are the problem or the source of the trauma? Maybe some parents are the ones causing the problem. What would your suggestion be then? And maybe we can even just think about that and come back to it later. But I wanted to raise it because it's been in our box.
We're going to come back to that.
Okay, we're ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. Let me come to that and let everyone have another bit of time to put their ideas into their question. Yeah, that's a very good question.
I'm waiting. Here's some that are coming in. Oh, here's someone who has adult students. So the parent relationship is a little bit different, right? Some of these older students or adults, they don't have childcare. And so this teacher encourages relationships with their children when the children join the adult students for class. So kind of like extending that courtesy, which could probably go in both directions, right? If you have kids welcoming their family members or their caregiver into class in a very welcoming way.
Well, these are really good questions. So I'd like to kind of respond to them because, to two issues. One is the caregiving issue of younger children at home, the siblings. It depends on the objectives of your parent night. If your parent nights are open and free flowing and you want to meet the whole family system, then that's not a big issue. But if you are really having a focused, very systemic, informational night with your parents about your high school students and their parents, then this is where you collaborate across the school to perhaps negotiate childcare or create childcare situations, or your auxiliary staff could be the caregivers in the sibling room down the hallway. I've done all kinds of situations where I've collaborated with agencies in the area. I, on the other end, have been a community partner where I have provided 30 students to schools to be the caregivers while the parents are with the teachers. So there's a lot of ways to use your community resources, but also across your campus, maybe use your auxiliary staff in a different way.
Yeah, this is coming through a little bit too, I think, thinking about like language issues, maybe when the teacher can't communicate directly to the parents of the child because they're from another place or their parents speak another language. And we talked about this in our other webinar too, but people commenting on using a sibling or a group of parents together to facilitate.
As you plan your parent night, I would advise to survey the population of parents who are coming so that you can plan ahead and use a community resource with a translator. The only challenge that I have as a child advocate, having a younger child be the translator would be a real challenge for that child, a cognitive challenge. So and I'm kind of moving towards community partners, as you can see with my examples. But let me come back really quickly to that issue of sometimes the parents are a challenge and they could be part of the trauma for the child. And so this is an opportunity to really get to know your parents before you have the open night with the parent group. I advise you to build the relationship so that you do understand your parents before you have that open night. And by saying, let's connect with community partners, perhaps some of those parents are, I had a lot of incarcerated parents in my previous life, and sometimes they really misbehaved. So I really had to work with them before they came to the open night, and I would connect them with community resources, counseling, therapy, alcohol treatment programs, drug treatment programs. So you really need to get to know your parents on an individual basis before, so that you can understand their needs before the open night happens. So let's connect with some community partners that will help us get there, right? And they'll be different for you in your area, I'm sure. But I am validating that many times the parents can be an additive trauma to the student. So using community resources, they could be for counseling, they could be for alcohol treatment, they could be for trauma impacted parents, but develop some of these partnerships, reach out, communicate with these agencies, ask questions, collaborate in trainings. Maybe you're going to find a lot of information online of how to deal with problem parents. So the internet has a tremendous amount of resources, and I have my favorites. They're at the end of the slide presentation. I have my favorites, but I think we all have challenging parents. I call them challenging families. And so, and I cannot do it alone as a teacher, nor can you. And so this is where our partnerships really come into play. Also, that crazy bio at the beginning, I had one program that had 24 languages. And so I really had to get to know my ESL partners. I really had to get to know my English language office in town. I really had to get to know the immigrant agencies. I spent a lot of time in the immigrant agencies getting translators because I had none of those languages except one. So it was I know that you're in a very similar situation out there where you've got a diverse population. So, and collaborating trainings. Some agencies have a lot of money for training, or they have great training where you can share and send a couple parents to go, and the parents that go can come back and share with the rest of the parents. So collaboration in trainings is really key. But using our community resources is absolutely vital. So what agencies or organizations or people you might have go-to people that you might reach out to that offer support and collaboration with you where you teach. So you might want to share some of those resources in the chat box.
That'd be great, Georgiana. I'm thinking too about the possibility. Our teachers are all located in Europe, but there are many Europes in Europe. And there may be teachers from other places too. So sharing these kinds of resources and knowing what's available across borders be really important. So everybody go ahead and add what you know. And if you don't know, that's okay, because we're going to offer some advice here and globally. And I hope that we'll have lots to contribute. All right, I'm waiting to see what comes in. I think one thing you said is really important and does have a comment in one of our boxes, Georgiana, which is you have to know when it's too big for you as a teacher and when you should take that problem somewhere else to get more advice, more support, bigger layers of help. Most teachers are not psychologists or social workers, so there are limitations too. So teachers associations, that's comment here. Maybe you can get in touch with your English Teachers Association. They might have a resource for you, or at least a good network, so you can find the right people. Yeah, associations that are connected to a particular student group you're working with. I know that there are lots of associations for diaspora communities, whether they're groups of Syrians that have come into Europe, or certainly Ukrainians, Belarusians, others in this space, that they have support networks and help. Refugee associations like the UNHCR.
Oh, well, I'm giving a hug out to all of you who are throwing things in the chat, because you're right on. The UN, the good news, unfortunately, the good news is that trauma is a hot topic that is concerning everyone globally. So many organizations that typically have not had trauma research or trauma resources do now. COVID changed everything because it was a global health epidemic, pandemic rather. And so we've got global resources through the UN, through UNICEF, through refugee organizations, through the Red Cross, which is international, although it's based out of the US. So we've got a lot of trauma resources, and to inform us as educators, but also to inform us as humans. And so these are, many of them are free. And so I encourage you to explore, because even the teacher associations that I have belonged to for many years did not really focus on trauma. And now they are really focusing on trauma in the last 5 years because of many things that are happening globally and nationally. So please.
There are a couple of, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
There are a couple of other comments that might also, I'm just adding in, and sorry for the interruption.
Please.
There's just this little bit of break, I think, in our timing, but youth centers that might exist in town, psychological centers or health centers that might have that kind of service, educational departments, social workers. And then this is an interesting one I had never really thought about, but a syndicate or a union that you might belong to with education. And then last one we have is researchers. So to look to academia or to maybe a university in your neighborhood. And finally, one more, and this is saying ask your counterparts, your other teachers, other educators in your institution or your community.
Well, your colleagues are such a big resource. And what I didn't say throughout this PowerPoint, and I just want to throw in there, is if your school does not have a student cafe, start entertaining that idea. You can call it the Conversation Cafe or the Hangout Cafe, but that cafe can really add a social and emotional element and outlet for your students. I worked with my students in creating 3 cafes in our local elementary schools. And I was just like, what? And that cafe was highly populated with students who were sharing with each other,
A cafe doesn't necessarily mean coffee, right? It's just a place where people meet.
It's just a place where they can take their water, their backpack, and hang out, and they decorate that room. It could be a small room, it could be a big room, it could be the courtyard reserved at a certain time, but there's no cooking or anything like that. It's just a space for them to hang out without teacher intervention. And there's some ground rules at the door. All ideas matter. We care for each other. You could have 3 or 4 ground rules of entering that cafe. And so we got to put all these ideas together this morning, right? We got the instructional strategies. We've got some environmental strategies, and many of you have so many of these already, but now you're going to revisit them and sort of polish them up, and then working with caregivers and using our community resources and putting all of those together as our tools in working with students who have experienced trauma. But we always can start with one. We can always start with one strategy. So I don't want you to leave me this morning or say, whew, this is a lot to process. I really want you to think about, what are you doing now that you can adjust and tweak, or that you can try out, and say, okay, that one's working this week. Let me try another one next week. And so you can always start with one. You can always start with one. And so now we're going to take a look at a student. So now we're going to put all of it together, right? All of this stuff swirling in your brain. This student is 15, Peter. He had loss of family income. Families aren't working anymore. They were transitioned to another region. Very loss of stability, loss of home. Doesn't attend class. doesn't want to interact with the students or you, and doesn't express ideas during class discussions. And so now you got to put it all together. Maybe you're only going to think of one, but what instructional, environmental, or caregiver or community strategies might help the student? I know we don't know a lot about him, but we know that one trauma can be related to many other traumas. And all of you pointed this out in your chat box, like when there's a loss of income, there's a loss of food, right? Loss of predictability. So there could be multiple traumas related to his recent trauma.
This is great. So everybody take the ideas you have, share them with us in the chat box. And we've already got a couple coming in. So we've got good problem solvers here, Georgiana. Set up a conference with his caregivers, so his family or parents, if he has them. Let's see, pair him with a peer, another student from the same age group or the same language group, so he has a buddy. Maybe give him some choices or some options for individual work. Oh, this is a good one coming in from a teacher. You could survey interests and then have an activity that appeals to his interests or his strengths or talents, that kind of gives him a good position in the classroom. Oh, I like this one. Maybe just let him know that you care about him. And so providing one of those affirmations that you talked about very early in this webinar, Georgiana. Oh, here's a good one too. Our audience is smart. Make a family visit and let them know that you're concerned about him not attending class. Maybe have classmates reach out to him when he's not there. You could also ask his family how you might help him at school and to get along with his classmates. Oh, wait, one more. Like have an activity where students can show their expertise, like that they give a demonstration or teach each other how to do something to build confidence. Maybe do something that extends to other modalities. If we think about multiple intelligences, like doing something with sports or music outside of the specific language sphere.
These are all really great, and many of them pointed to attendance, which was this an area we did not cover today. So these are excellent because you want them to come back every day. You want to know what happened to them when they were not there. And I love the fact that you have the students reaching out. So these are really supporting social and emotional wellness, and feeling like you belong to this classroom, feeling that if you're not there, everyone's going to miss you. And so all of these really touched on a lot of all of these 4 areas. So this was a really comprehensive sharing. So thank you. This is, but we want to make sure he comes every day. So, you might even create a committee, a well-being committee that reaches out to him when he returns to school. So great ideas. So today we explored a lot. we explored some instructional strategies. We took a look at the environment, how we can have that environment support what we do. We want to make sure we utilize some ideas with parents and caregivers and connect with community resources. And you'll find if you focus on your classroom, you're going to dip into every single one of these. You'll dip into what can I put into my classroom? What can I share with the parents? So you'll end up, you might start focusing on just one area, but you'll start reaching out and spreading it into other areas. Childhood trauma can lead to an adulthood spent in survival mode. And I love this quote so much, where they're afraid to plant roots, to plan for the future, and to let joy in. It's a blessing to shift your classroom from surviving to thriving. So that's why I love at the end of the day, we go, oh, see you tomorrow. We're going to do this, and this. And it's not simple either, but we want it to be more than survival. And so I was at, and I love this quote, so I hope you do too, but when we send them off, we want to send them off with a message that says, there's tomorrow, we're gonna see you tomorrow, right? And so I have to say, and I go, and there's my people. And then I had one student go, yes, we're your people, and so it's not that simple. It takes a lot of practice, but I really love this quote because we don't want them to spend a lifetime into survival. We want our students to thrive, and we can be part of that. We can be part of that. We can be transformational and change that. So I thank you for hanging in here with me this morning, because this is a topic that I think is so vital for all of us, not just for you, but for everyone who works with students. And so I hope that you enjoyed learning about these 4 areas. And so thank you. And I look forward, I'm really hoping you come with us and keep going and share more of your great ideas into the session that follows.
Thanks, Georgiana. You've filled me with a lot of optimism and a lot of joy. I think there's no doubt that there's some positive ways that we can help bring our students along, both for learning and for their own safety and enjoyment of language learning and so much more over time. And I like this final slide with both the heart and the brain. It makes a sense. It's exactly what teachers combine in all moments, a brain and a heart. And when we surround our students with those, it's really powerful. So thank you for everything today. And I would like to thank all of our audience members, both on Zoom and Facebook, for joining us today. On behalf of the regional English language offices in the region, I want to say thank you, as well as to invite you to participate in other activities. If you have ideas for topics you would like to see us explore or activities that you would like to organize in your communities, I would encourage you to reach out to your regional English language office. If you don't know who that is, you can comment on the Facebook page. We'll put in the links there. But I can say it's really been a pleasure to have you. And don't go away. We're going to stop live streaming, but to continue chatting on this important topic of strategies for trauma-informed teaching on Zoom in an unrecorded session where you can meet other teachers from the region, exchange ideas, and build on this knowledge. So the link is being shared in the Zoom chat box and also on Facebook. As soon as we close this session, Georgiana and Lottie and I and Alyona and Kevin will be Zooming to the other Zoom, and we'll meet you there. So thank you very much. Have a great evening, and I hope to see you shortly.
I see you soon.